Hello all, welcome to Low Code Campfire, episode number 149 for May 31, 2024. This is a relatively unstructured day. It's Open Lines Friday, but we welcome you to the event. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantin App, joined capably today by Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for Plantin App. This is an event we do every Friday this hour, and we just get together, talk about low code in general, Plantin App in specific, and it's just an opportunity to share techniques, the challenges that you're facing, the experiences that you've had with the product, and we all get better because of it. We record all these and put them out on YouTube, so youtube.com/plantinapp will get you to all of the 148 hours that are already done. You should definitely go out and subscribe to that and hit the alarm bell so that you know just as soon as we post these, which usually is just the day after. We run this agenda. We always say hello because it's meeting format, very friendly group. And then we go around the campfire. We always start with first call, anything that got submitted in advance, and we'll hit some of these other areas. But we can usually fill up an hour. After an hour, we'll go into our afterglow segment. That's where we stop the recording, celebrate that it's almost the weekend, and just enjoy each other a little bit more. So do engage with us, jump in, show and tell. You can just unmute, just get in and chat with us, but do engage. We only have a couple of rules, and the main one is if you've got noise going on behind you that you hit the mute so that we can all have a good conversation. You can submit things in advance using this link, which is also in the emails that we send to you. And with that, I will say hello all group this morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just curious, do you guys check your email when I say all that? Is that what you're doing? Yeah, it's a little repetitive. Anyway, I'm getting faster at it. All right. First call. Anybody have something that you just want to talk about this morning? It's a shy group. Nobody has it. Right. I got some stuff. I always have something in my pocket to talk about. So let's talk about the version release. Let's see. We've been trying to get version 126 out the door, and it hasn't happened yet. And so at this point, we're saying soon. We do not have a date. We're working through the final things, but unfortunately, it's not out yet. So that's a thing. Let's see. And yeah, okay. Ben, I like your comment. Absolutely, that'll work. So there was some stuff in our feature requests. For anyone who is not familiar, we have on the community portal, there is a feature requests segment. And so you can, if there's things that you think would be helpful in the product, you can mention them there. You can even sponsor them. That doesn't happen very often, but if you did, that'd move it to the top of the stack. And so the most recent one here was mentioned by Anthony. Anthony is on the other side of the world and rarely gets to join us live, but I think he always listens in the sometime from the recording. And he's just pointing out this is talking about input parameters for workflows. We have lots and lots of different types of input parameters. Well, we have different types of input parameters, and he was interested in having a drop-down variety so that you'd be able to control that, much like a drop-down controls input to a form, that you could control it just directly on a workflow. So that's an interesting idea. I thought maybe there was some things that we could do to help in that area that were already in the product, but then I got to looking at it and there isn't. So I think the idea here is that you're doing input on a workflow you're testing, and you want to make sure you only pass in good values, especially if you're branching, for example, based on that value, you might get, if the value isn't a good one, now it doesn't, maybe it might not branch correctly, the workflow might error. So I think it's a good suggestion. So there's testing workflows, which is kind of intended as a developer activity. From our perspective, I think the idea is that a workflow inputs, running a workflow dynamically would be something more, kind of a developer activity, versus if you're going to have, which then isn't quite as a controlled experience as compared to if you wanted to run a workflow and it would have it under some kind of a form or program control so that it runs. And so you could put a drop down in front of it in terms of putting a form that runs a workflow. But interesting idea to have it. So I wanted to point it out in case anybody wanted to upvote it. As we've talked before, you come to feature requests and hit the thumbs up, and that's adding your vote to the feature. All right. So that was the most recent feature request. You're invited to add more if there's something that we can do to help you. Since last time, I mentioned last time that I'd spent a lot of time working with the item picker preview, and I have put this out on the Campfire website. For those that don't know, the Campfire website, anybody who wants to participate in that can get a login to it and be able to see the contributions that are there. That's the main point, that we can put in working low code and see how it works. But you can also contribute and share with your other low coders. So I put in, if you're not part of it and you want to be part of it, send me a message. I'll make sure you get an invitation. Anybody who's part of the meeting, the Low Code Campfire, can be a member. And so anyway, the tool, item picker tree view, looks like this, where you can open up a structure, a parent-child structure. In this case, I've got people and teams and team members and members of members beyond that. So this could be like a catalog structure. Just think about any kind of information where it's listed in a hierarchy, and the result of this, when you click on one, would be that when the form is submitted, you get lots of values, like the value, like a drop down. You can have a value associated with this, and so Radu's initials are the value, for example, on that one. It shows the text, the path to that thing, the whether or not they have children in that tree, whether or not it's selectable. So lots of different functionality. So has anybody used this or used it successfully, either one of those two things?
I've used it experimentally and met with some success, but never have used it in an implementation yet.
Some of the core features of it are really pretty cool. For example, there's a search that will open up the structure, find the records that are connected to that, that match the search, and then it opens up the hierarchy that, so in this case, Patrick belongs to technical success, belongs to Bogdan Latescu. So it's really kind of a cool search capability to be able to browse by way of whatever your hierarchy is. Pretty cool.
That what you've accomplished right there, I think I mentioned last week, but that's the part that I've never been able to get been able to get to work, and so that I think is a really great thing. And I've used this before, and actually have put it into place, but I've never been able to get the search to return the hierarchy, which I think that's a very cool thing that you've done there.
Um, I shared offline last week that in our Afterglow segment that this control, the programming on it, is a little bit challenging. The code underlying it really needs some attention. Uh, but if you know exactly the ins and outs of the control, you can implement it. Once I learned the rules behind this, I was able to put this contribution together in 30 minutes. It's very easy to use if you know to avoid the charged rails, the difficult things, the ghost story issues that can be troublesome. So just again, if you want to use this, I would take a close look at this contribution. I built a data structure uh, that that has all of the fields that are part of this and that are being consumed by that particular control. And so this is what the data looks like that's behind it. Oftentimes people use a SQL query that generates these kind of values rather than actually having it as data, but I just find it very easy um, to visualize it when I'm just consuming data, right? Just select all these columns directly from a table, then you can manipulate them and things like that. The so just wanted to point out that the data is available for you to view, and then because we haven't documented this very well, I've put together some informal documentation that talks about it, and uh, two things that I will point out. One, that it really requires a pretty specific column layout. I mean, this is SQL based, and so the main thing that you need to know is that it's expecting 8 columns, and I have a sample query in here of exactly what the columns are, and it's case sensitive. Preferred that you do it in the order that's listed here, but if you generate these columns in your data, you're going to get a good result. And then, Patrick, to the thing that you were talking about, that not getting that tree view to work, to the search to work together with the hierarchy, there's one very confusing functionality that it's just not documented. It works, it's just not documented very well. The SQL that you are writing automatically gets some parameters. One of the parameters is search text. So whatever you're searching for in this box, whatever you type in here, ends up getting run as SQL, and it triggers the SQL and it provides it by way of the search text. And as a developer, your temptation is to take that search text and go filter your records based on it. You know, like is the text like the search text or something like that. And the documentation doesn't, it spells it out, but not very well. The thing is, you're really not supposed to use that search text to filter things. Um, if you if the search text is not equal to blank, excuse me, if there's search text provided, in other words, you're just supposed to return all of the rows in your SQL query. Don't do any filtering at all and let the control do the work. The data source that's underneath this control will automatically provide the hierarchy and do the searching. So you're not responsible for doing the searching. And it's confusing because they're providing you search text, but you're not actually using it. And then the other case is the search text is blank. This is the query that happens when um, when you're browsing the tree structure, not using the search. So you're browsing the tree structure, and every time you click something, a SQL query gets fired off. And so if the search text is blank, you just want to return the records that are underneath the parent. And so you'll see that what happens is that if the search text is blank, that you're looking for all of the places where the parent is equal to the parent ID. This is another parameter that's passed in. It's passing the parameter, the parent ID of the thing that you're currently opening so that it can find the children anyway. It's not that hard, and when you have a good example to follow, hopefully that'll be something that you can do. But the that hierarchy starts to work right when you for the search. It works right when you have a good data structure and you're using the search text the way it's intended. Matt, please.
So regarding you mentioned something about the field names. Is that important, or is it the sequence that's important? Or,
Yes.
and I also noticed in your data structure, you've got some, 1, 3, 5, 7 sort of thing.
Yep. So I was rather than looking at my document, I'm actually going to look at the item picker tree view control.
Yep.
And so here's the actual SQL query that I have at work in this particular case. Our code is looking for these columns with that case. So it is case sensitive, and ideally in this order. If what happens, and this is the area where I've put in a ticket to our development team to improve upon, but if you provide columns in this SQL that are none of these things, you have extra columns. We search for the column names that are here, and if we don't find the column names as I've shown them, we look in the position. So if this were not, if this, for example, were named text or anything else, because that isn't present, it would look for whatever's in the first column of the row. Well, if you don't provide all of these exactly this way and in this order, you kind of don't know what you're going to get. So I highly recommend you just provide all the columns.
So for example, though, you have the column named text. Could you select, in my case, it's caption. Could you select caption as text, and would that work?
Absolutely. That would be valid.
Okay.
And something else as value, but the as column name should match case that I have here.
Okay.
And then again, not documented terribly well, but when this query runs, it gets 3 inserted parameters. We get search text, which we've already talked about. We get parent ID, which is the ID from the control of the whatever parent you've selected. But you also get parent path, at parent path. And so your question about looking at the data, you can either do a search based on parent path, or you can do a search based on parent ID. So if you only want to provide, empty values for path and parent path, that's perfectly acceptable. But I would recommend that you provide those columns even if you're not using them, and just have them be blank. But you can then search for at parent that parent ID column equals at parent ID, or alternately you get parent path, so you could search for parent path equal at parent path. Yeah. So if you go the parent path route, for example, if you're viewing the technical support team record, it's going to pass an at parent path of 1/2. So you want to select out the records for that have the matching parent path, and so now it's going to open up these 2 records as subordinate.
So Dale, for clarification, if you didn't have path and parent path, you would need to have item ID and ID in your, yeah. So it's a choice of those two pairs of columns that are necessary.
But again, because of the odd way that it's coded, I would still recommend providing those columns, and just the columns
Yeah.
you're not using, I'd still provide them and leave them blank.
Yeah.
So if we're paying attention to the, I'm sorry, in my data here, instead of using item ID, I'm actually using ID as item ID. You can see that. Let's see. Let me open that up. So this even answers your question, Matt. I'm using the ID of the record as the item ID. I'm providing the column it wants from something else. And so in my case, I'm using parent ID to compare to ID. So go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, and not to get too like, deep in the, in the granular on this, but anyway, what have you tested? What would happen if the path and parent path combo disagrees with the item ID and parent ID combo? Does one of them take precedent, or?
I haven't tested. I'm reasonably certain. Again, the main use of these is that when you provide it's going to it's going to provide you the @parent ID SQL parameter, and it's populated from the item ID of whatever record you're looking at. So if your SQL is focusing on using the parent ID side of that pair, it's going to be providing an @parent path, but you're ignoring it. Right. So I suspect if you use whichever ones you use, it's just ignoring the other one. It's all about what SQL.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense.
The other thing that, just in exploring this control and looking at the data, the parent ID that it provides when the control when the page is first being rendered is -1, and the parent path that it provides when the control is first being rendered is a slash. So if you want, when you're refreshing the page in the first place, the thing that controls what items are shown on the top is any values that, in this case, I'm doing it based on the ID. So it's whatever is -1. So that's how you get parents. We could add a whole additional parent here. And let's do it. We'll ignore, we won't do path. We'll just do the parent ID is going to be -1. He's going to be a top level 1. He will be selectable, and he won't have children. And so when we refresh, we'll now have 2 parents, and Alex would be selectable, but he doesn't have any children. I'm leaning away from my microphone again. Thank you, Mark. I had it pulled forward, but I'm leaning back. I'm being lazy today. Anyway, so yeah, that's another key factor on how to use this, is being able to pick which ones are parents. You don't have to have parents, and that's a kind of another use case. The control could show up completely empty, but your search would work. Right? So if you don't want to populate a list, but let them search, that would be fine. If you do want to let them browse the list, then you got to provide parents. All right. I've labored on that enough. I'd be happy to answer more questions, but there's only, I want to go where you guys want to go today.
I have a question, Dale.
Yeah.
on this. So are those items actionable? So, let's say you're, for example, automobile. You type in your brand, you pull up the brand, and underneath the brand, you've got all the different models. Are they actionable? Can they do anything other than, in this case, open up a child?
So, well, they're not actionable from the standpoint that you click on them and something happens. But when you do click a button, whatever one you're focused on is going to return the values. So I'm focused on delivery team. I get the delivery team
Mhm.
as the team member text, but I also get the path and the parent path. So you could use the information of this to figure out who the parent was. So
But
um,
the bind values work though, right? The bind act.
oh,
So
oh,
if
that's a
you,
great question. Um,
I think I have done that before with this field. So if you were to have JavaScript in your bind expressions, or or just even um, yeah, and try JavaScript, or you could do a show a field or something. But I think that should.
what
I think just the field value. So you can try that. Yeah, that should be the your 2-letter value that you have, hopefully.
So let's try it. So we'll, since I'm doing console logging, and let me get arranged here, we'll set it up to doc underneath and look at the console and we'll click a couple of things.
Yeah.
So clicking on the plus sign doesn't make action, but clicking on the item does make action. So that's interesting.
Which I think is the desired behavior that you'd want, because you're actually making the selection when you click the
Yeah,
item.
yeah.
Right.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anything else? Anyway, the example's out there to follow along. Hopefully it's useful. That's the only one that's been added recently, so we'll close all that. Go back to our agenda.
Hi
Okay, we're
Dale,
still,
Jerry here.
yeah,
Before
hey
we get
Jerry.
away from this topic, I watched that very intently. I found it horribly interesting. I have been a genealogical programmer since 1980 something, so I I both understand what's going on behind the scenes and what you're doing on the top, and it begs the question, um, what would happen if, in your example, you're doing a tree structure of people. And I see these little drop downs and these little controls like this work awesome for product categories and shopping carts and various things that have a, a perfect drill down type of scenario. In a human environment, it's usually people referring people either in a business model or even a family tree of some sort. I wonder what would happen if we loaded this control with about 100,000 people. I wonder, at what point does this thing explode on itself? I'm challenged with that every day. I've written 1,000 different
Yes,
genealogy algorithms, and I used, our listing view to show, and I'm writing the actual SQL query that's doing the recursion and building the exactly what this controls building. I've already built
yes.
that code from behind the scenes and a very optimized code for that. So I would love to load this thing up with one of my bigger clients' genealogy files and see what happens. What if I
So,
fed that thing 100,000 records and saw what happened? I'm just curious.
so I know a little bit of the behind the scenes, and so there's kind of, I think, two answers to this. The drill down piece of it is very efficient because when you click the plus sign, it's running the SQL query saying, who are the children of this thing? And so as efficient
Yes.
as your query is, it's like in this case, it's returning one record or two records, right?
Mhm.
It's very efficient. But when you're using the search text, as I was saying earlier, the way to use the control is to return all the records. So now you're returning 100,000 records and letting the search control do the work. And I absolutely don't know how efficient it would be at a
Yeah,
huge data set.
I'll provide some testing on that. Feeding this creature, as I looked at your data and all the paths and the item ID and the parent ID, I actually understand that. That's reading a kindergarten book for me. I really enjoy this kind of stuff. What Patrick had kind of alluded on it. Most of the people in the world that would use this control it would be awesome if the database that they're going to try or the data that they're going to try and put into this fashion would have an ID and a parent ID. All the paths that you're seeing are either calculated because you keyed them in that way, or you're running a SQL recursion query and you're getting those paths and feeding it that way. So for the customer to build the data model to see this actually happen on the screen, I was just thinking, it would be pretty amazing if all you had to do was feed it an ID and a parent ID, and
I
then the
think that
control did work.
I think that's the case. I think that you really
Yeah,
do only need to feed it the ID and the parent ID. So it
yeah,
works. That's what I was clarifying earlier, is that it works with the combination of the item ID and parent ID, or with the path and parent path. You have to have you have to have one of those two pairs populated in the data source.
yeah. That's amazing. I wouldn't expect, Patrick, for many of our users to understand what that path is.
Yeah.
Uh, those IDs separated by front slashes and the drill down effect on that. Um, but I do. I understand it, and it would be real easy in one of my clients to feed this control um, one or two records or one or 200,000 records with an item ID. It's basically the user ID, and the parent ID is the user ID of the parent, and then see how our team's algorithm pulls that back in and how it handles it. Um, but again, I think this control is the better use case for this control is something more like it has kind of a finite end to it, categories in a product table, um, a cool way to display a hierarchy that doesn't overwhelm itself, maybe 100 items or so. I don't know. It'd just be fun to test that. But when I see that in Dale's example, he's using human beings, oh, that reeks of a network marketing company or an insurance company that has a hierarchy in their management. It's used everywhere on planet Earth, but sometimes it doesn't grow as big as the things I've seen. So, um, but yeah, it's a very nice control. And if it's as easy as feeding it with an ID and a parent ID, I think people could get some great use out of this building nice screens with that. Awesome, awesome display, Dale.
Yep. So I was trying to do one that didn't have um, that didn't use the path, and
Seen the work, did it?
it it I have something here. I was hoping it would just be simple as anything, um, but it's uh,
So on that particular screen, it would look like where in your select statement you'd want to do that ID as item ID again in your query and see if that's mapping properly. Um, but
Oh, yeah, your query, Dale, you need to correct your that the underlying query. It won't work for both scenarios, I don't think. Oh no, because you
well,
have it as parent ID. Yeah, you do. Never mind. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
so
So let's look. You got 10.
so I would not have expected it to show up on the initial load
Yeah. Hmm.
because um,
It should be under forward.
yeah.
Hmm.
So still playing required. I, I would we should be able to do it without path and parent path, but I don't know. So How many more things do I not know?
Well, and the other thing I think that I don't know if you said this today or not, Dale, but you've said it in a previous discussion of this, is that this is a very old control.
Yes.
It's been around for a while. Yeah.
Yes, we did the development on about 8 years ago, and I don't know that it's been updated since, but yep, it works. All right, we still have time for first call. Otherwise, I'm going to go on to our low code development playbook. Right.
Got one quick thing, Dale.
Yes, Don.
A shout out and a question. So I had a situation where I'm trying to upload a fairly large file and using the upload control, and it's sporadic, not every time. Goes through the motions, but then says this field is required. Um, I had a older version, original version of 125, I think it was, and I needed to upgrade, and that's where I ended up with some kind of a weird thing where when I clicked the upgrade menu item in the configuration, it duplicated the configuration page. So thank you for helping me clear that up. Um, that worked. I upgraded to the latest 125, but I still see that. So I know 126 is.
You still see what?
I still see the error message saying this field is required. So I provide, as we're running the form, I provide the file. It's a legitimate real file. It goes through the motions and shows the file there, but then it says an error message, this field is required.
Okay.
So some kind of weird error. I don't know what it is. It has in fact uploaded the file, because if I go to the folder that I specified in the form where it should upload the file to, the file is there, but it still gives that error message. Then and so I'm wondering, do I wait on 126 because maybe it's been fixed,
No.
or do we just submit a ticket and try to track it down in 125?
Right. It's unlikely that I know of no issues that were fixed in that having anything to do with that error message. So 126 is I mean, any areas where we're not working, we're just rolling forward the same functionality. So I would expect 126 to behave the same way as 125. I think one of the last questions I asked you was what browser was involved and whether you see different results on different browsers.
Oh, okay. Okay. I did not test that, so I could go
Do you
back.
do you, do you know what browser was involved?
It was Chrome. I
Good.
typically
Which
work with
I
Chrome.
would use that all the time. And I would say as the next step, if the file is shareable, if it's not proprietary, I would attach the file or a zip of it to the ticket and a screenshot of the way or the form design, but somehow communicate exactly how your form is set up, and I'll be happy to try and reproduce it. I'll really work hard on it next week by assigning it to Patrick. I won't be here.
All right.
So
Yeah,
by all
happy to.
means,
It's
load
not
it
a
up.
particular file that's causing it. It seems to
Well,
be numerous files that are causing it, but I'd be happy to share the form with you or share a login for you to take a look at it if that's
is
easier.
there are these files of any particular size? Are they large?
They, yes, they are MP3 files in the multi-meg.
Yeah.
They get
And
up
see,
to 50.
excuse me?
They get up to 50 meg. It's not always the largest file. I think 10 meg was causing the error the last time I tested it.
And the reason that I ask is, I mean, we have a lot of people that upload files using single file upload and have no issue. So there's something unusual. It's either in the environment, either the way that you set it up, that particular server has some issue, or there's something about that file. And I was just trying to and it may be this, larger MP3 files, for example, handled oddly. But there's the fact that we've never heard this error before makes me, there's some oddity in your scenario. And so I'd love to try to reproduce it and see if we can capture it. Like anything else, if we can't reproduce the issue, it's very hard to eliminate it.
Exactly.
And
Okay, we'll
sounds
do.
like it doesn't happen for you all the time either.
Unfortunately, for the client, it's a monthly occurrence. So it doesn't happen all the time because they only do it once a month.
Yeah, I guess my point is, does it with every upload? I mean, can you reliably make it fail?
No, I can't reliably make it fail. That's the real trick.
That's yeah. So um, I'd love again, just and anything that you can share about that as you open the ticket, we'll try to reproduce it.
Great, thanks. The big thing here is for this group is thanks for the uh, helping do a hot fix all the way to the latest version. And when you do see a problem, should you wait on the
Yes.
next version or should you report it? And I guess the answer is go ahead and report it.
Even if you report it, reporting it is really the right answer because what I would, if I knew that this was a known issue and it was being fixed in the next release, I would let you know that too. But either way, you
Exactly.
just have to research it.
Okay,
Uh,
great.
Mark, I saw you had your hand up. Then you took it
Yeah,
down.
my hand it is up for Don. So Don, does restarting the application or the app pool, does that clear the problem temporarily?
Hadn't tried that.
Because Dale, you might recall probably a year and a half or so ago, I had a very similar issue with trying to upload large files. Um, it had something to do. We did resolve it. You helped me resolve it, Dale, and I'm going to go back and look and see if I can find that issue. It had to do with yeah, I don't remember. It has something to do with if I was storing the file directly or if it was waiting on some kind of confirmation from PayPal, if I remember correctly. Donna, is there a payment method involved with your transaction?
No, there's no payment. There's two different files, so there's two single upload fields. In this case, I don't recall ever seeing that both of the files, both of the upload record fields gave the error at the same time. It's usually the large one that says this field is required. Um,
And
and then that's pretty much it. It just uploads those two files. There's one other thing that's a date picker. So those three fields are when you submit it, it creates a record with the two file IDs and the date.
Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry, Dale. I'm remembering a little bit more. Um, I'm thinking that what I did is I switched the single file upload field to actually do the upload when the file is chosen instead of waiting for the form submit. And by doing that, the form didn't have to wait for other things to happen before attempting to save the file to the disk and clear the space that it was holding in memory. And so she was being overloaded with trying to hold on to too much and waiting for something to happen to allow it to do its final save. So when I saved the file right when the user chooses it, instead of waiting for submit, then the problem was resolved.
there's
Well, that's
a
very interesting. How does one do that with the controls? Is there a configuration field that I'm missing?
um, so going back, Mark, I'm remembering the issue that you're bringing up as well. Uh, everything that the issue that you ran into, I think, had to do with the fact that the PayPal action was in play and the special things that we have to do to make it where you can go away from the website and to PayPal and then come back. Um, The single file upload control is going to upload only when you click the button. Click some kind of a form submit. So I don't think there's a way to make it work instantaneously. You might have divided it up into two different forms. We might have used a different control. I don't know. But I think the thing that I heard, Don, what I heard you say a minute ago was that you're uploading two different files in single file upload controls at the same time. Is that true?
That's right. One is the MP3 file, which is large, and one is a text file, which basically is you know how with YouTube you create a a time stamp, a time
Mm-hmm.
code list. The second file is a text of that time code list. So at certain points in the MP3 file, you can jump to that point and listen to that point.
So I
So
think
that's a
that
small file.
I think that Mark's and based on what you're telling me, that the thing that you're doing that's unique or not quite as common that we're I mean, I was surprised that we weren't hearing more of the error, but the thing that you're doing that's different is you got two different files. One of them is really, really large, and you're doing it in the same submit. So that's the kind of thing that I would hone in on trying to do a reproduction to see if that scenario that we're not handling it well. But in terms of a workaround, Mark's suggestion is spot on. If you were to design that form so that instead of it being one form, that you do it could potentially be two forms. It might be other ways to structure this, but where they only do one of those files at a time, it might work around whatever problem we have.
Understood. Yeah.
And
Okay.
that could still, I think, to again, Mark's idea is spot on. It could still be one form that so you only offer one upload field at a time. So you've got a upload MP3 field and upload MP3 button. You click that button, now that field gets hidden and the button gets hidden, and you offer the text file upload and the text file upload button. And so you're forcing it to be done in separate steps. And so then the button is only responsible for uploading one file. It should work. It should work the way that you've got it. But I'm just saying, if you're anxious for a workaround, you might try restructuring it.
Yeah,
And in the
that makes
meantime,
sense.
submit a ticket and we'll try and reproduce it. But I
Got
think
it.
we've honed in on the key difference detail that Patrick will figure out next week.
So,
Yeah, I think that would be fine with them too. The client would be fine with, okay, first upload your MP3, and now that that's done, upload your text file. That's done, and now your records are done.
Yes. Um,
so real fast, I
please.
agree with all of that, but I'm pretty sure, in fact, I'm very confident that one of the controls does upload immediately. So if it's not the single file upload, maybe it's the multiple file upload or it's the file explorer control, but something does. So before you build a whole bunch of stuff, you might look for that.
Oh, I don't think I know the file control thing. I'll go back and look at what other file fields there are and see if there's a different field and try that.
Yes, and it does escape me which of those might be instantaneous, but that might be an answer as well.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Ben, you had suggested the possibility of chasing a ghost story, and if you have the story and the answer and the inclination, I'd love to hear that.
Sure. So I could share my screen because I created a sample, like mini version of the issue that I've come across. Now, I don't know if anyone else has come across this, but I could have sworn that I've had a situation like this in the past. It happens rarely, so I don't have a very strong memory of it, but it did happen to me again. And that is when using a token that has parameters inside a condition.
Couple listing.
In this particular test, it's in a listing. I don't know if it happens like within forms as well, but within a listing, this is definitely something that's acting funny. And that is the types of quotes that you use for the parameters. So just share my screen real quick. So basically, this is a simple listing. The data, there's only one field. It's called my value. I have a whole bunch of buttons here, just basically to show different situations. But this is basically the issue at hand. So you're calling a token, you're giving it a parameter, and the parameter is listed in here. Now, here's the piece. This one is using double quotes. This one is the same, but it's using single quotes. Looking at the data, you'll see blank value. It correctly identifies no value, no value, no value, both in single and double quoted. I also have this as a my token that calls a workflow and a my token that uses SQL to show that it's not just a workflow call that maybe is misbehaving. It doesn't seem to matter. It's just a my token, period. This one has a single value and it works. This one has a single value and it works. However, if there is a comma inside a string, the double quoted version of a parameter being passed to it does not work. It will not return the results that you expect. If you use single quotes, it will.
Nice catch on defining the problem. And this is the kind of thing that I can, same issue. If it's completely reproducible and I can, grab your form and just say, this is, this should show up with a value and it's not. I suspect our developers can find out why a comma interferes, but that's very interesting. Good ghost story.
And again, this only happens, just to give you an example, if I take the double quoted version and I add it as a computed field, so you can see the parameters around double quotes. It does always work. It is only when it's used inside a condition. It seems like in here, this is not being evaluated the same exact way. Something's interfering with it. So, because this was driving me crazy, because when I was doing it, I threw it in a field and I'm like, I'm getting the correct value, whatever, but my buttons aren't showing. And then it was just something that Dale had mentioned about single and double quotes, that he usually uses double. I usually use single. But I usually have a behavior of parameters here. I use single, but then outside I use double. This is what I usually do. I mix them. So by dumb luck, I just said, what would happen if I turn these to single? And all of a sudden everything worked. And I'm like, that's odd. So in case anyone else comes across some very strange behavior in conditional statements of buttons, at least specifically on a grid, I haven't tested it on a form, just know that if you're using double quotes and it happens to be a string with a comma in it, you may not return what you expect.
That is the very definition of a campfire ghost story. How much time did you spend and how much time did I spend chasing that yesterday?
Yesterday, yeah, we spent a good time. I've been chasing this now for probably the better part of 3 days.
And the thing is, syntactically, what you did was correct. There's no I mean, there's nothing you can point to and say, oh, that shouldn't work because, well, no, you did it correctly, and worse, you're displaying the value. When you display it, it works, but you do it in a condition which you can't display, hard to debug. The value is not what you expect, and then you don't get the condition that you hope for. So, and the fact that it comes down to whether or not there's a comma in the value also, makes it very slippery. So I suspect our development team will be able to resolve that, and I will create the ticket for that. Nice one. Okay, we are 3 minutes to the hour. I'm not going to start any new topics, but I will give you a chance for any final thoughts or questions, and then we will move to Afterglow. Right. Well, since there are no others, I'm going to just say that it was a good hour. I learned a lot. I'm very glad that you were able to show that, Ben. And together by doing this week by week, we improve the product, we improve our ability to code in it, and so thank you for what you guys add to it. I will see you in 2 weeks. Patrick will take good care of you next week while I'm gone. We are adjourning to Afterglow, so hang around if you want to. Thanks.